Hello and welcome to the Wooper Club Season 9 Draft Recap. I'm your host, Nate IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant. I am joined, as always, here by my co-host, SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hello, everybody.
And we also have another guest here with us today. It is Michael, FruitTaco, coach of the Route 1 Birbs.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here.
Yeah, the three of us were probably the most adamant about getting something released for this season. We don't necessarily want to call it an in-between season because we do put a lot of work into these seasons, but it's not the typical draft season, but we still want to have something out there because, oh boy, this looks to be an insane season. Steve, you and our other admin, Matt, were kind of in charge of the discussion for what Season 9 would be. Why don't you tell us about what we're getting into this season?
Right. After discussing with everyone, we ended up settling on draft multi-battles. Everyone went ahead and drafted 7-man teams, which we'll get to in a second. And then over an 11-week season, you're going to rotate through, be partnered with the other 11 players in the league. We have 12 participants this season, and you'll play against all the other 11 participants twice. It's going to be quite hectic. Multi-battles are not something we're quite familiar with. We were actually really excited to find out that Sports Showdown actually has formats for these, so it's something we're able to do, something that wasn't here a year ago, and we're excited to see how it is and see how a multi-battle metagame plays out.
Yeah, I know we've done a couple of seasons somewhat similar to this in the past. We've had a couple VGC seasons. I believe those were seasons 3 and maybe it was 5. But multi is something very new and very different, despite all the interest we have in 2v2. This is definitely our first foray into this. So, having started prepping for this just a little bit, I have a few interesting thoughts on this, but I'd like to start off with our guest, Michael, here. What do you think so far, just getting into this prep process for week 1? What are your expectations for this season, and how it's going to shake up, more so from a prepping perspective and getting ready for each week?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that we all kind of noticed going into the draft, I know there was a lot of discussion that, like you said, people have some familiarity with other, 2v2 formats, whether it's doubles or VGC. And multi is a bit of a different monster because you think of drafting things like, Trick Room or Weather, that are viable strategies in other, 2v2 formats. But now you have to be drafting Trick Room and hope your partner is also good with that. So it's definitely an interesting blend of trying to piece together a strategy for both you and your partner, and seeing who's got, the offensive pressure this matchup, who's got the support this match, and hopefully they're not the same person because they can only bring half the Pokemon.
It's been interesting. Having drafted, spoiler, I did draft a little bit of a Rain core here. I have a couple ones working with Rain. I think a big thing is, do I bring Rain or not? And maybe even more so for my opponents, does my opponent bring Rain or not? And there are so many little things like that. As you mentioned, Trick Room. Does my opponent bring Trick Room? How much do I have to prep for that? Are they going to bring their terrain? How much do I have to prep for that? Are they going to be bringing spread moves at all? How much do I have to prep for that? Even with just 7 mons, there is so much going into this. Any other thoughts so far before we get into the individual breakdowns?
I mean, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and the prep I've done so far, it's a nightmare trying to figure it out, and it'll be real exciting going through each week and getting to work with everybody in the league, getting a chance to see, everyone's different preparation styles, and get to get a little closer with everyone and figure it out, and also trying to schedule with 4 people. That sounds like a great time. Really looking forward to.
Also, maybe something interesting before we do head into the individual drafts. Steve, could you please tell us a little bit about what we're anticipating for a postseason? Because I thought that was very interesting, what we came up with for it.
Yes. Our current plans for the postseason are the top 8 teams will make it, and it will be fixed partners once we get to the postseason. The 1 and 2 will be paired together. The 3 and 4 will be paired together. 5 and 6, 7 and 8, and then just a small bracket from there. So 1 and 2 versus 7 to 8, 3 and 4 versus 5 and 6, and then the winners play in the championship.
Yeah, so I don't know how much people are going to be looking at even manipulating the seeding at the end of the season, but I thought that was kind of an interesting way. We are going to have two winners, as makes, I suppose, the most sense for multi-battles. With that all being said, we only have one transaction to fix up these teams, so let's see what we came up with in the ever so important draft process. We're going to start with the number 1 overall pick. And to start things off with the first overall pick, and definitely not rigged, it is Matt of the Cincinnati Incineroar. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
Oh, happy to be here.
And I see that you did take the mascot pick with the first overall pick. We know about Incineroar and doubles, but tell us a little bit about the pick.
Yeah, not gonna lie, when you think of powerhouses, you don't really think of Incineroar, and so, you might not prioritize something like that, but just in terms of its flexibility and utility, and I mean, there's a reason it's at the top of the charts in like multiple different doubles formats, because it's just so versatile and an easy bring in basically any matchup. So
definitely true.
I just had to grab that.
And I see a lot of versatility in your next two picks as well, Suicune and Necrozma. Suicune with a lot of different setup options, both for itself and the team, and Necrozma is just the king of different ways to set up and beat you. Talk about how you complemented the Incineroar with those two picks.
Yeah, so Suicune, I wanted a Tailwind user, and going for type synergy as well. I thought the Suicune would be cool, and plus the inner focus to not be able to flinch was really handy. And then in the Necrozma pick, I felt like my first two, they weren't quite as offensive as I would like to have through my first couple picks, and so I really wanted something to have more of an offensive presence. And so I figured Necrozma offers me a very powerful attacker and flexibility as well. So that was my thinking there.
Honestly, very strong top three. Steve, what do you see about the types overall?
I have I've taken a look at these typings, and honestly, there's really nothing that stands out in terms of weakness. All the weaknesses have at least one resist to cover them. You could maybe say fire a little bit because just the 4 times weakness from Ferrothorn, but there's 2 resist to cover that up. All in all, fairly balanced. Nothing that's really exploitable, except for perhaps no flying resists or weaknesses. Just straight normal effective damage along that flying column could lead to some flying spam put in holes, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Michael, what do you think about how the bottom 4 picks all kind of round out the team together? What do they provide for him?
Yeah, so I mean, I think Crocodile being on there, now he's got 2 Intimidators on his team. I think there's so much opportunity to just annoy his opponents with those. Ferrothorn being, a great option for a variety of things. Bulky and defensive, Trick Room offensive. It gives him a lot of different options, as well as just, a fantastic steel type, and how useful just steel is as having a good, reliable defensive steel type on your team. Comfey, I also like having some interesting priority options if you want to run triage, as well as having access to Tailwind and a pretty good speed stat. And talking about Tailwind and a good speed stat, then you got Crobat, who is just so fast, has some good options there to support the team, and as well as just be able to harry the opponent with being fast, being able to U-turn out, being able to toxic things. I think there's a lot of different things that those Pokemon can bring to any given match.
And we saw at the very end of last season what all Crobat can provide in many different ways, defensively as well. Yeah, I do really like the Crobat pick and the Ferrothorn pick, getting 2 extremes of the speed spectrum here in a format where you can do basically anything that you want. Matt, any other final thoughts on your team before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, my biggest weakness, I feel like, to me, seems to be just the lack of redirection. But, even with that, Comfy has, Ally Switch if I did want to, change things up a little bit. And then, Comfy also has, Trick Room as well in the event that, we're up against a team that is just, natively faster. Maybe I'm not running a bunch of slow guys on my team, but maybe they get Tailwind up and we want to just, flip that on their head, then, that's an option as well. And so, I'm really looking forward to the flexibility that I've got going on here. It's one of my favorite teams that I've drafted so far, and, I'm looking forward to seeing what teams I can crank out with my partners week to week.
Definitely, it'll be a lot of fun to see that. And I know that doubles is a format that you're more comfortable with compared to a lot of us. So I expect big things from, especially the number 1 pick with Incineroar. Definitely not rigged, not at all. All right, we're going to move on to the number 2 pick then. With the number 2 overall pick, it's Michael in the Route 1 Birbs. Michael, you picked Urshifu Rapid Strike with the number 2 overall pick. That seems pretty good. What do you think?
Yeah, I was pretty happy to get it. I mean, of course, its ability negating Protect, which is, probably the best move in 2v2 formats, as well as Surging Strike's always critting, and pseudo negating Intimidate that way. I also knew that we had banned Rillaboom for this season, which is, of course, a great answer to Urshifu, so I thought it was going to be a very strong and very consistent presence for the season.
And then I see you followed that up with 2 picks that are... They're both normal type, but they seem very opposite, right? The Silvally can fulfill just about any role, especially having Tailwind access, I think is really cool. And the Indeedee is the other normal pick with Psychic Terrain, something we don't see too many terrain or weather teams kicking around here because of the potential inconsistency, but it is also such a good mon. What are your thoughts on your 2 normal types?
Yeah. So Indeedee F, I definitely like. It's got good support options, but also, it has Psychic Terrain, which is, very easy to exploit if, my partner for the week has a strong Psychic type, and Indeedee itself can also exploit it if you want to go more offensive with it. So, it felt like just a very strong and versatile pick, which I was very happy with. And then following that up with Silvally, getting towards the middle of the draft, I really didn't have a whole lot of a plan. There were a lot of good mons left. Didn't really know what avenue I should be taking with the rest of my draft, and Silvally is just a great versatile Pokemon. Like you said, it has Tailwind, it has Parting Shot, it has good coverage. It can be whatever type offensively or defensively I or my partner need for that week. So I thought it was just a very safe pick that, no matter what I felt like drafting for the rest of the draft, it was going to be able to fit in however I needed it to.
So I don't like to call out specific later picks, but I have to say, Kyurem 5th round, Thundurus 6th round. Holy, how did we let this happen? They seem like 2 incredible mons for later picks. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I definitely had, kind of had my eyes on them for, most of the draft, and just had never really felt like time to draft them as I was picking up other pieces. But then when it got down to, the Kyurem with Freeze Dry is just a pain for so many of my opponents, as well as, being able to fire off very strong blizzards. It's just an absolute powerhouse. And then Thundurus, I wanted a good electric type as well as a little bit of speed, because I think that's my biggest the problem with my team. And being able to Prankster Thunderwave things that are already under Tailwind seems pretty good.
For sure. I think Thundurus is a lot more versatile than people give it credit for. Steve, how do you feel about the typings overall, and what are some of your thoughts on the team overall that he's got?
Regarding the typings, it's decent. There are a couple of weaknesses with electric and fairy, and of course rock. But overall, nothing bad. Nothing stands out as super exploitable. The team itself, quite threatening. You mentioned those strong late round picks. Some key pieces that can really help support his partners as well. Bronzong being able to, support someone who's very strong in Trick Room. Togekiss with the natural support, of course. You mentioned Indeedee with the Psychic Terrain. So definitely lots of things to work with. I don't necessarily see quite a strong theme within the team, but that's probably fine. So, besides the color, as someone pointed out.
True.
Yes,
We're going
we're
full
very
gray.
neutral colors this season.
Love it.
No, I mean, I agree with you that there isn't a particularly strong theme of the team because I think the season it's gonna be interesting to see how the season plays out as far as what strategies you can bring reliably and what will people do if you're only bringing 3 of your 7 mons and you have to be factoring out into how they play with your partner. I'm not sure how consistently you can have some strategy, so I just tried to pick some very strong, very versatile pieces. And of course, you point out with the weaknesses. I definitely think I could be doing a little bit better defensively with my typings, but that's also why I have Silvally can fill whatever defensive role I need it to in a match.
I think lots of good support options, lots of good just click button go burr options. It's well rounded. I think you can adapt very well to whatever your ally is planning to go with as well. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think the biggest concern I have with my team is definitely my speed tiers. Don't have great slow mons, don't have any particularly fast mons, but I mean I do have Bronzong, who's great with Trick Room. I do have 2 very good Tailwind setters in Togekiss and Silvally. So I think I can do just fine with that.
I anticipate big things, yeah.
That'll help mitigate your first 5 picks, all being in that 80 to 97 speed tier.
Yep.
I think you rounded out the draft very well with those couple picks for sure. I think you're someone who you got a first round bye in the previous season, and the season before that you took down the champion in their Elite Four run. So I think expectations are just getting higher and higher, and I think this is the team to execute on them. Let's move on to the third pick. With the third pick, we have Zach, coach of the Summit County Psyducks, who has in the past won a VGC season in our league. So I think he kind of has a little bit of a leg up on a lot of us. Maybe that shows with the number 3 pick, which was Landorus Incarnate Form. Steve, this isn't something we normally allow with Sheer Force, but here we are.
Yeah, Landorus Incarnate with that Sheer Force boosted attacks is so dangerous. So many good options on both the physical and special side, and really just impossible to prep for with all the different options it has. Of course, on the physical side, it has that Stab Earthquake, which you can pair with the Sheer Force boosted Rock Slide. Great combination there. On the special side, of course, it has everything you can want, really. So many options: Psychic, Earth Power, Sludge Wave to hit both of all mons on the field. Has some great pivot options in U-turn. It's got setup in Rock Polish and Sword Stance. Really just whatever it needs to do, it can do. We haven't even talked about, Sand Force, which you could decide to pair with a more with a Sandstorm partner if needed. So tons of options. 101 base speed, getting past that base 100 mark. Really just a threat and really solid pick for the third overall.
And to pair up with that, he has not only another Genie, but another legendary flying type after that with Moltres Galar. Michael, this is just a lot of mons that are very good in doubles specifically, and a lot of mons that are just good. Their base stats are, well, what an impressive team overall.
Yeah, I think this team is just threats. And a lot of offensive ones at that. I mean, he does have the standout pick of Blastoise for his second pick, which is an obnoxiously strong support option that I did not even realize till this season. But then he has, Tornadus for Prankster Tailwind and Monstrous Hurricanes. Entei, of course, throwing off Sacred Fires that hurt so much. Dusclops gives him a little bit of options in Trick Room as well as some bulk. But then you got Moltres, Galar, and Tapu Koko at the end of his draft. Both just mons that you have to respect because If you don't, I mean, Moltres is just going to be smacking you with hurricanes and fire rats, and Tapu Koko is just going to be using its blistering speed and electric terrain to be frying you.
Just a ton of options that all make a ton of sense in doubles, a lot to play around with. Steve, we mentioned 3 flying types. How does that work out for his type coverage overall defensively?
Well, as you certainly could expect, there is a little bit of a weakness here to Rock and Ice. Rock having the 3 weaknesses with no resists, making Rock quite a spammable move against him. Ice having 3 weaknesses, one of them the quad weakness from Landorus, but does have some resists. So a little bit better off against Ice. But still, those really stand out. Water also does not look great with 2 weaknesses and only 1 resist. Electric's a little iffy with 3 weaknesses and 2 resistor immunities. But really outside of that, everything else looks pretty solid. Lots of neutral damage possible, but not a lot of weaknesses to take advantage of.
Yeah, this has been absolutely painful to try and prep for. Just the amount of support options, the amount of offensive options. This is absolutely gross. Personally, I think this may be the single best team that we're looking at right now. Michael, any closing thoughts on this before we move on to the next coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think something that, also stands out is its speed. Base 130 on Coco, 111 on Torn, 101 on Lando, 100 on Entei, then 90 on Moltres. It's just a bunch of speed. And with so many threatening mons and the ability with a great Tailwind setter, I mean, this team is built around hammering down the opponents. And if his opponents let him do that, he's going to do absolutely incredibly. I think Steve pointed out with the tons of neutral options for him getting hit, and Blastoise and Dusclops really being the majority of his bulk on the team. It'd be interesting to see if people can find a way to shut him down and just chip away at his team relatively easily, but they're going to have a devil of a time doing that with the powerhouses there are.
Absolutely true. We're trying to out-offense this monstrosity. Let's move on to the next coach. With the number 4 pick, we have steviemallia, and he selected Dragapult, 1 more slot, and could have maybe taken that up myself. But I hear Dragapult's pretty good, Steve. What do you think?
Yeah. Dragapult is definitely one of the strongest mons permitted. That blazing fast speed, as well as the versatility of its move pool and various abilities. One of the few mons that has multiple viable abilities, can easily swing both physical and special. Was definitely a terror in VGC. So high expectations here for Dragapult with all of the things it can do. Whether that be slapping on a specs and spamming special attacks, trying to set up with Dragon Dance with Clear Body to prevent Intimidates, or any mix in between. Tons of options here. Really excited to see how it changes week to week and what we can get from it.
Also interesting, the interaction with Dragon Darts and doubles, one of those smart moves that will only target mons that it can actually target, which is kind of cool. The rest of the team, I'm going to admit, it looks kind of all over the place. Can you help us make some sense of it, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I think all over the place is definitely a way to describe it. You've got the 2 Ultra Beasts on either side of the attacking stats. Of course, Buzzwole, strong physical attacker, and Neolego, strong special attacker. You've got Prankster Screens and Shenanigans with Grimmsnarl. You've got Ludicolo, which could abuse rain. You've got the Wheezing G, but I want to zero in on that 3rd pick, the Victini, which I think was excellent value for a 3rd pick. Base 100s across the board, but access to devastating V-Create, the ability to run special sets, the ability to run support moves, Thunder Wave to be bulky, can even set up Trick Room, even if it's not necessarily going to abuse it. If his partner wants to abuse it, it's going to be a pretty reliable Trick Room setter. And I think that was just incredible value there at the 3rd pick.
And I think the one that I will highlight for great value is from an individual pick is that Grimmsnarl at 5th. Not only is it known for its viability with setting up screens and the like, which are more valuable in these double formats, but it is a dark type as well, which is an awesome complement to those two picks that we had highlighted earlier, the Dragapult and Victini, both of which were weak to Ghost and Dark. Dark Fairy providing quite a bit for that. Fairy also complementing Dragon really, really well. I think Dragapult Grimmsnarl has quite a bit up its sleeve that it can do with those prankster shenanigans, with an actually very abusable attack stat too, and a pretty nice move pool just in case you're looking for one or two extra slots to hit something in particular. However, with all this all over the place, Steve, you got to talk about some of the type weaknesses and strengths that we've got going on here.
Yes, there are definitely some weaknesses that stand out here. Flying, of course, being a big one, having 1 resist in Nihilego, and then, of course, the 4 times weakness from Buzzwole and the Ludicolo weakness. Especially with Nihilego having such a poor physical bulk, any physical flying moves will just tear through this entire team. There are also other weaknesses. Steel's not looking great. Rock only has the 1 weakness, but no resists. Psychic also with only 1 resist and 1 immunity with 3 weaknesses. Lots of different types that could be spammed pretty effectively. Ghost, of course. Nate mentioned the 2 Ghost weaknesses. There's only the 1 resist. Everyone else hit neutrally, but that's Ghost for you. But all in all, lots of types that would be quite spammable in general against the team in whole, and it'll be interesting to see how things can be created each week to mitigate that and take advantages of what this team has to offer.
Yeah, Michael, you only bring 3 bonds every week. Do you think that's good enough to be able to complement the partner and take home quite a few W's this season? Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think Dragapult is definitely something very strong that, I think it would be very easy to have a partner support. Victini, like I said, provides a lot of different options that I think could gel with a couple of different styles. Grimmsnarl, Prankster Screens, there's no team that isn't going to appreciate that. And I think the Weezing could be a little bit of a sleeper pick and pull off some crazy things. Of course, it has, Levitate to protect itself from ground-type attacks when it's just by itself, but, we might see it running some neutralizing gas to see if it can disrupt any of the opponent's strategies that might be ability-based. So I don't really see what this team is necessarily trying to do on its own, but it's got enough pieces that I have to believe there's something to be made of it when you put it together with a partner.
Absolutely. And to kind of finish up with those 2 Ultra Beast picks, yes, Buzzwole is super physical and Nihilego is super special. They're also very bulky in that sense, too, in the respective categories. I think if you can properly mix and match things, you can definitely make some things happen. It seems like a lot of mons here with some extreme qualities, but if you can put those together properly with your partner, I think we could see some magic happen for sure from this very interesting team. With that said, we're going to move on to the next pick. And next up with the number 5 overall pick, it's me. It's me, IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant. And with my first pick at number 5, I chose Zapdos. Zapdos, I thought, offered quite a bit. This is one I've always wanted to draft, first of all. This is generally a Tier 1 mon that doesn't quite seem like it should necessarily be up there, but it's so solid in so many ways. Awesome resist between things like fighting and ground that are around often. Flying is kind of a tough resist to find, not to mention Tailwind. Lots of cool synergy, I think, with partners. And, of course, DCI, I did immediately partnered up with Politoed. Yeah, Rain is a little tough, I think, to justify overall, or any weather pretty much is tough to justify in this kind of format with multi-battle where other teams maybe can't take advantage of it. But I also thought Politoed just had so many interesting support options. Icy Wind, Helping Hand, even things like Perish Song. I think it was enough to kind of justify that, not to mention helping out Zapdos with things like Hurricane. Maybe the rest of the team was based around that, not so much. I think after that I kind of just wanted to pick up ones that I thought were very good. Volcarona down there, not necessarily something in the rain, but has a lot of cool, interesting support options, and that was kind of the general idea of the team overall. I know there are a lot of weaknesses on here, but I kind of want to hear from an outside perspective. What are your thoughts on the team overall? Steve, we'll start with you.
I mean, yeah, well, I'll start with typing as I usually do, and Ghost weakness exists. Not an uncommon thing by any means. Not having any resists could be a little tricky, especially against something like a Spectre, maybe. But of course,
wonderful talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Aegislash helps with that though. So outside of that, Rock, of course, a little iffy. Especially having the quad weakness from Volcarona with only 2 resists. But yeah, outside electric. There we go. That's electric's being a little scary, especially as a rain team having no immunities and no resists even. That certainly is a little concerning if people are expecting you to bring rain. They just pack thunder and smack you pretty well.
Yeah, definitely true. I think that is probably one of my biggest concerns for sure with the team. We only get 1 transaction. I'm not really sure. I do kind of like the roles that all the mons play on here, but I'll definitely be looking for that. I think that's something I kind of overlooked overall in the draft process. And as I got kind of honed in on, these are mons that complete just about everything else that I wanted.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a very diverse team, and I think that's I think that's a strategy in drafting this season that, you don't need to have a super strong core identity because you're going to be blending it with your partner every week anyways. But you've got that super strong rain options of, Zapdos being able to go more offensive with Thunder and Hurricane in rain, Dracovish, of course, being terrifying in rain, and even, the things you don't think about, like, Volcarona gets Hurricane. It's got a huge special attack stat. I mean, there are options there, and then you've got, Aegislash, which can do a couple different things as far as, whether people have to worry about it being bulky and maybe having a weakness policy. Hitmontop, of course, having Intimidate and tons of priority options. Clefairy, having a lot of support options. I think there's a lot of different directions you could go in any match, which I think is a strength.
That was definitely. I kind of see the Hitmontop as a little bit of a weak link, but when I see it and things like Clefairy and Politoed and even Rage Powder on Volcarona, I really like the support options that I have overall. I do think that Clefairy in round 7 was actually a little bit of a steal with Friend Guard providing just so much, along with Follow Me, Helping Hand, etc. The support options I think are genuinely cool. I like the idea of having a rain core that can shine, while also being able to have a bunch of mons that let my partner shine as well. So, like I said, I wanted a lot of diversity. I think I at least nailed that portion. Maybe the types, maybe the speeds aren't quite there either. I know nothing above the Waste 100 from Zapdos, and no Trick Room setters either. But I think overall I'm pretty satisfied with this. Any overall thoughts before we move on from you two?
I mean, always looking forward to what you can do in a season. Our historically strongest player, and I'm sure you'll come up with something. Maybe it'll take a little bit of time to get set, but I assume by after the second break and maybe a trade down the road, you'll definitely have an identity to your team and be quite something to be worried about. Of course, I'll point out the Dracovish. In our league, it's had a history of kind of underperforming, but that's always because when it was still allowed, it was always drafted by some of the not as well performing coaches, and so now it's here with you, and we'll see what this monster can do.
Yeah, I think, like you pointed out, I think the speed tiers are a little bit questionable, but you do have 2 base 100 speed tailwind setters, which can help with that. I think the thing I'd like to see from you is maybe picking up another strong offensive presence down the line, because, I mean, surely Zapdos and Volcarona can put in a lot of work, but I really see Dracovish as being the very scary mon there to watch out for defensively for your opponents, but I'm not sure quite how much pressure the others are going to necessarily be putting on just by being in your team draft.
Very true, and the reason why I like doing this and the ability to team up with people is I'm excited to work with y'all, and as a prep junkie, I like seeing how you all prepare for each week too. And that's definitely what I'm looking forward to most this season. getting to know all of you and your styles and everything. With that said, let's move on to the next pick. Next up in the middle of the draft, the number 6 overall pick, it's Steve and the Waterdeep Wobbuffets. Steve, you picked Tapu Fini with the 6th overall pick. How do you feel about that, and what led you to lead to that, and how did you decide to build around it?
Tapu Fini I drafted having one of those terrains that we all know and so well.
Very knowledgeable, yeah.
Very knowledgeable. This mainly allows me to get rid of other terrains so I don't have to learn them. And that was kind of the main reason. Is it's a great defensive support piece that I can probably splash into any team without much issue at all. While at the same time allows me to get rid of other terrains if anyone starts spamming a terrain I don't like. Psychic comes up a lot. And being able to, if I need to that week, get rid of the psychic terrain and the huge expanding force or whatnot, that could be quite beneficial and is why I took Fini as my first pick.
Now, normally I would talk about both of the next 2 picks, but I do see a bit of a theme here. I see a lot of Ultra Beasts, a lot of some of these legendary pawns here. Naganadel was the 2nd pick, and eventually kind of end up following that up with just a bunch more legendary picks. The Spectrier definitely stands out as a late round pick that ended up, I think that looks really, really nice. Talk to me about some of those and just the high base stat total and value you get from these.
When Naganadel made it back to me, the thought was, man, this is a pretty decent mon in doubles, it looks like. So I'll take it for this 2v2, and it's a chance to use a mon I haven't used before because we really don't do anything that allows Ubers from singles. And honestly, the same thought happened with Spectre, and the same thought happened with Pheromosa. So I just have those 3 as kind of my offense there. 3 different similar mons, high, more glass cannon like. They all boost up their stats after attacking and securing those KOs. So lots of offense here to hopefully sweep through a lot of teams if my partner can support me well.
And you have some very interesting, maybe not traditional support options too. The way that Fini supports perhaps isn't necessarily as traditional. Stack Attack and not your typical Trick Room or Serena preventing priority in a very different way. Michael, what are some of your thoughts on the team and how it actually comes together? We see a lot of high base stat totals, but what do you see synergy-wise, or how do you view the whole team in general?
Yeah, I think this team is maybe more than any other really going to test this format. Like Steve was talking about, with the 3 very fast but somewhat frail offensive threats, we'll see how that works. Not with this being draft, not everyone is going to have access to a top tier redirector, if any. And so you might see those glass cannons being able to punch through things easier than on other teams. For me, I think the biggest value pick at the end was Stack Attacka. Just an absolutely monstrous Trick Room option to have on the other side of having Spectre and Pheromosa, as well as, Naganadel with incredibly fast Tailwind. I think it's just so many brutally powerful options. It's going to be really tough for everyone else to see how they go about trying to prep for all of these different options that if he brings one that you don't prep for, you're going to be in for a world of hurt.
Definitely tough to prep for everything. I think maybe the Celesteela pick's one we don't talk about enough here that kind of embodies that. Is this going to be a defensive mon that maybe suffers a little bit from all my friends are dead syndrome? Is it going to be a setup option? There's a lot of interesting weakness policy stuff that you can do with your partner here too. Steve, what do you think about the team? How are you expecting to perform with this amalgamation of mons?
I have high hopes for the season. I really like the team after getting one. It is a little one-dimensional, which I've tried in the last season to not much success. But this is different. Still kind of one-dimensional, but there's definitely the offensive side. But then you guys have mentioned the kind of more defensive side with the Celesteela and Stack Attacka and the Serena and Tapu for support. So there's definitely more options than I've had before in last season. while still kind of trying to focus down, one main option. We'll see. I have no idea how this season's going to go. The 2v2 is, not my specialty as is, and adding multi-battles to it really is messing everything up.
And I think that's kind of true for all of us. I think that's why what Michael said definitely rings true. This is going to test the format. What can we do about this? All these mods. This is maybe the scariest team from what I can tell.
Yeah, I want to just bring up one more thing that, this format and this team might, show some interesting innovation on is, Beast Boost and Grimnay, boosting stats, and then being able for your partner to psych up or swap those stats onto your partner. I think there could be some really tricky, really cool stuff that we might see this season, and I hope we do.
That does sound fun. Steve, do you think you're up to that challenge?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely looking for ways to not only sweep myself, but use my stats to help my partner. Pheromosa's got speed swap. That's something that we're already thinking about. Is hey, what mon do you have with 151 base speed would do some good work?
Fair enough. This should be one of the more fun teams to watch, I think, for sure. I look forward to teaming up with you. I know a lot of the rest of the league does too. You've got some his recent history of success here. This will be a lot of fun. Let's move on to the next pick. And with the number 7 pick, we had Tony and the mighty Miltanks, and his first pick was Tyranitar, which is here to support. Well, Steve, why don't you tell us whether you ran Sand last season, right? What do you think about the T-Tar?
So T-Tar, I think, is actually a great pick. T-Tar is a great Pokemon, has very versatile, ton of options, and does, of course, come with Sandstream to set up Sand for reviewing the rest of this team. Really not much on this team, but it does open up the possibility for a teammate to take advantage of and abuse it. Also, of course, it doesn't have to run Sandstream. Could run a Nerve to shut down the berries, which are a little more common in a 2v2 format. But all in all, Tyranitar, a little bit on the slower side, which can benefit it, of course, in Trick Room. One of the 2 rock types drafted, giving it access to that stab, rock slide, which, rock being a great offensive type will really put in a lot of work, especially off the base 134 attack here. It could, of course, be a breaker with its massive attack and great move pool. Also can be a little more defensive with its great defenses and HP. Not so much that comes to mind in terms of support, but definitely lots of options here. Can even run special a little bit, 95 special attack, get some unexpected moves. Just kind of looking through like a muddy water coming out of it would be unexpected, but it's something that could do. Great pick, and really excited to see what all it'll end up doing.
Yes, I think definitely the stab rock slide off of that giant attack is the number one thing that I would look out for. As you said, not many rock types out there to make rock slide that threatening, but this thing can set up. The move pool is ridiculous. Whew, what a good mon. How about the rest of the team, Michael? What are you looking at here? What stands out to you?
Yeah, so I think there's so many strong picks on this team. I think, Zeraora as his second pick. Zeraora is just a fantastic mon. Strong, fast, has a fantastic... it's got such a strong Volt Switch, and pivoting is great in this format. But as far as fast things, he's also got, Latios, he's got Starmie, he's got a couple of pretty fast options here that could do some damage. And then I'm really interested to see the Komodo. I know last season we were discussing, Clang Scales and Tearing and Clangorous Soul and all kinds of things, and where did it really settle out? And then no one did anything with it. But I'm excited to see what can happen this season. Playing Scales, super strong move that hits both opponents. Clangorous Soul to get an Omni boost with a partner who's redirecting that turn. I think there's a lot of options for it. And then you've got Toxtricity, which is just a threat that if you do not respect will dismantle your team. So I think there is a lot of different offensive options that he can play around with at will.
Definitely true. Yeah, I definitely agree on the Komodo being maybe the most interesting pick here, with tons of versatility to, I think, decently complement the T-Tar. But typings-wise, what kind of story are the typings overall telling us? I see some overlap already, just as at a quick glance.
Yeah, there's definitely some overlap, and that is of course causing some weaknesses. Chief among them, there's a dragon here with 2 dragon types and no fairies or steals to provide resists for them. So dragon looking quite spammable. Fairy also looking quite spammable because of those dragons. There are some resists, but an additional weakness from T-Tar. But all in all, that's a little scary. Ghost, of course. Rock with the 4 times effectiveness on Charizard. Resist from Komodo, but that's it. Ice, of course, bad. Ground, not looking good. Lots of types here that don't look great. There are some that look fantastic. Fire having 5 resists and no weaknesses. Great matchup against Fire. But no one drafted Sun, so I'm not sure if that's actually going to be an issue.
Well, if you have any transactions available, I could help out with the Charizard pick as well, so that could be kind of interesting. Maybe fix up with one pick and slap that in. That could be kind of interesting. Michael, I kind of want to talk about these Psychic types a little bit. We've got double Psychic with the T-Tar to back up what is a shared weakness. These are 2 very fast, very strong Mons. What do you think of those 2?
Yeah, I think the double psychics there. Latios, I used 2 seasons ago, which it's a great Pokemon. It's fast, it's strong, it's versatile in terms of being able to run like Dragon Dance physical or just using its great special attack stat. And then it's also got some interesting stuff to do in a 2v2 format. It has screens. It has Heal Pulse. It has Helping Hand. It's got Trick. It's definitely got a lot of different things that it could use to spice up any strategy you put together with your partner. The Starmie, similarly, it's got some interesting options. It's got a lot of different coverage options. It's got fast flip turn. And it's got, it has Trick Room, Skill Swap, Gravity, Trick, Pain Split screens. It similarly has a surprisingly versatile number of support options that he could run if he wanted to. So it could split into a couple of different strategies. I think the Starmie is maybe the pick I'm most uncertain about. I certainly see what it could do, but I'm not sure if it will really pull any of that off successfully. So we'll see.
Definitely fair, and I want to wrap things up with the 2 electric types that he's got, Zeraora and Toxtricity. You already touched on how strong those Volt Switches are, and how you really need to respect that, what all they can do. The Toxtricity with the spread moves, the super strong Punk Rock boosted Boom Burst and Overdrive, Sludge Bomb, Sludge Wave, so strong. The Zeraora I had last season as well, with so many different options, way more coverage than people give it credit for, way more options than you would initially think. I kind of see this team as kind of 3 compartments of 2. You have the 2 Psychics, the 2 Electrics, and the 2 Dragon-esque Mons, the T-Tar and the Komodo. And honestly, I think you can build something pretty well out of even just cycling through those Mons. Any closing thoughts on this, Steve and Michael, before we wrap things up?
Yeah, it's definitely there's not much cohesiveness going on within the team for doing all these duplicate typings. But of course, the partner week to week will definitely impact us a lot. And having multiple different dragon types or electric types to pair with your partner, can kind of guarantee you're going to bring that electric spark to the team. But your opponent's not sure, is it coming in the fast form of Zeraora or the devastating wall breaker of Toxtricity this week. Leaves lots for your opponents to guess about.
Yeah, I don't think I have too much more to add. I think, aside from Zeraora, I think there aren't a whole lot of very straightforward Pokemon on this team. So I think, having a good partner who can take advantage of the tons of different directions you could go with this team, I think will be key. and I'm interested to see how it plays out.
It's been fun to see Tony get better and better as seasons go on. Let's move on to the next pick. Picking 8th overall is Chad, coach of the Seattle Steamrollers. Thanks for joining us, Chad.
Yeah, no problem.
So we picked Regieleki 1st overall. Was anybody surprised? No? Okay, awesome. Regieleki's very good. Tell us a little bit about why you like it so much.
I know it's viable in doubles because of its like speed control thing. And I liked Regieleki a lot a couple seasons ago. I just figured it would be a good, useful Pokemon on my team that's kind of like a no-brainer. I'm honestly not that good at doubles, so like I usually just rely on like kind of spammy stuff that's like doesn't require a ton of thought. So
that does seem to be a theme of the team. We see a ton of psychic types, 2 psychic fairies in fact, one of them setting terrain because we know just how good expanding force is. We also see a nice little trick room component. We see the Zapdos. I love the Zapdos pickup. Tell us a little bit more about the rest of your squad, especially maybe that psychic stuff you've got going on.
Yeah, so like I used Psychic Spam like a while ago in a VGC season we did, and I kind of liked it. I've never really played doubles outside of the league, so like I said, I'm not that great at it. I'm actually like, I definitely like Tapu Lele just as a general Pokemon. I'm a little skeptical that the Psychic Spam is going to be super viable just because of the way multi-battles work. You know, like on my side, I have all the Psychic crap, and then my ally or whatever might not necessarily have the same stuff to support it. So like, I could definitely see myself, dropping Alakazam, but I don't want to call it premature or anything. And then, besides from that, I think the Trick Room core is pretty obvious. Actually, I like Glastrier a lot. It has really good defensive stats, and obviously Ice is a great offensive type. I think Hatterene and Porygon Z or Porygon 2 are kind of the, no-brainer Trick Room types. And then Zapdos is really good. It's just really strong and has a great ability for doubles. I think my main concern with my team, besides the fact that Psychic Spam wouldn't be viable, is that I don't really think I have a lot of good multi-hit options. Like sort of like a Surf or Heat Wave or Discharge or something like that. Just because, I think Zapdos and Glastrier are really strong, but they're mainly like single target, and I think the same can be said for most of my offensive threats.
I think that's probably fair. Steve, what do you see about typings? Do we see any common themes aside from 3 psychic types?
Honestly, looking at this my page, which has colors based on if it's super effective or not very effective, is mostly white. What's really neat about Chad's team, looking at it compared to others, is a lot of types. It's almost neutral with 1 weakness and or 1 resistance. So I could say Fairy's bad as it hits everything neutrally and hits Zapdos super effectively. Fire hits Glacier effectively, everything else neutrally. Poison hits 2 effectively, everything else neutral. Rock 1, everything neutral. Water's neutral all around. Normal's neutral around. There's a handful of others that are 1 weakness, 1 resistance. Steel has a lot of weaknesses because of all the fairies and ice types, but there's nothing that's really bad either. It's just all very neutral. No, typing doesn't matter.
Fair enough, especially when you're spamming those strong moves. Michael, he's got tons of power and tons of bulk. What do you make of the team overall together?
Yeah, I think he pointed out himself that, he's got a couple of very well-defined cores. I mean, Porygon 2, Hatterene, Glastrier, what amazing mons, all of them for Trick Room teams. Regieleki, so fast, so strong. You've got Alakazam, also very strong, able to abuse, the psychic terrain if it wants. You have Lele, also, you can Scarf it or Specs if you want. It can just do crazy damage. And, you've got the Zapdos with, Defiant and a lot of Intimidate being very popular in, doubles formats. There's just so many different strong options that practically pilot themselves. When you put them in the right situation. I think the biggest thing is going to see, with those relatively straightforward cores he's got there, how well can he integrate them with his partner for the league?
Absolutely true, and perhaps another thing, how well can the rest of the league read what he's doing, considering an almost undefeated season last season? Perhaps not well, and perhaps the brainless Regieleki Go Burr will work once again for you, Chad. Any closing thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely think that my team's fairly obvious, but I think each week my opponents at least have to have a 50-50 of whether I'm bringing Trick Room or whether I'm bringing fast offense. And I could see a couple Mons working on Trick Room occasionally as well as the fast offense, like Lele or Zapdos. And that, like, I personally, like, I'm not super willing to invest a lot of time to get good at doubles. So, like, I think just something spammy and obvious is probably my best option, so.
I think that's probably fair, and I think you're a good enough player for sure that you can still make it work and working with your teammates, some of which have a ton of experience in this. I think it's a pretty safe bet that you'll do very well. Let's move on. With the number 9 pick, it is our defending champion, Jimmy, coach of the Newport Noctowls. And of course, there is one standout we have to talk about. It's Diancie. Diancie is the mon that he picked 9th overall. Steve, tell us about Diancie and its increased role in this format in particular.
Yeah, Diancie is, from what I understand, a staple in doubles, specifically as a Trick Room sweeper due to its incredible defenses in bulk, the incredible move of Diamond Storm, able to hit both opponents with that great rock typing, as well as in that defense boosts, and the ability to set Trick Room itself. These key attributes allow Diancie to kind of enter the field and stay there forever, setting up as needed, and with proper support can tear through teams.
Absolutely.
It also is able to run things like weakness policy with its incredible bulk to further enhance that. So definitely something to be scared of and a huge Trick Room option there.
And a couple other mons that could potentially abuse that weakness policy. It's the Gen 3 Titans, the pseudo-mons of Metagross and Salamence. How did we let him get all of these? Michael, tell us about Metagross and Salamence. How could we let this happen? Oh my goodness.
I mean, well, I can certainly tell you I wouldn't have allowed it to happen if, those picks had existed when they got to me. But they didn't. Metagross, definitely something that I was really looking forward to trying to draft. It's an excellent Psychic type, it's an excellent Steel type, and with only drafting 7 Mons for this season, I think you really want to get the most out of those core typings that you can. And Metagross, it can be bulky, it can be offensive, it can be support, it can do so much. I think it's just an incredibly valuable pick. And Salamence, another one that I was keeping my eye on. Intimidate, great in 2v2. Tailwind Setter at base 100 speed, excellent. Strong options for physical or special. They're both just mons that can do so much and can take over a game by themselves, let alone how they can help other Pokemon take over the game.
Absolutely true. This is just a powerhouse of a team, and we can tell that by the mon that he didn't even wait for the last round to pick up Charjabug, of course. Who wants to pick up that one?
I mean, yeah, we all want Charjabug.
Of course.
And, now I laughed at it first when I first saw it in the chat, but it's got some value. It's base only 57 HP, but 95 defense and 75 defense with special defense with an Eviolite on there. Has some decent bulk. It has access to Sticky Web. It's access to Electro Web and String Shot for a ton of speed control options. And its ability, Battery, it boosts the power of its partner's special attacks by 1.3, which is certainly noticeable. I think it's something that people are going to not think they need to prep for until they actually take a look at it and decide, crap, this is actually a big thing that I really need to be aware of.
Yes, I'd say the bug bus will go burr, and it's going to be super embarrassing when I lose to it. Steve, I see a lot of 4x weaknesses on here. How do they all complement each other type-wise?
Well, at the very least, they're all on different types, so that helps. All in all, they tend to be in types that there's lots of resists. Weavile's 4x weakness to fighting. Doesn't matter because Weavile's made of glass anyways, but there's plenty of other resists in fighting. There's a 4x weakness to grass from Gastrodon, but again, 4 resists there and only 1 other weakness with Diancie, so that's all in all not that bad. Ice, of course, being a little sketchier, but that's also ice, so that's to be expected. The weaknesses really coming in on Steel and Rock. Rock with the 3 weaknesses and only 2 resists. Expected because, as you probably heard by now, Rock is really good offensively. But, some resistances will help. Steel, of course, having Diancie being 4x weak to that will definitely force others to try and look for Steel options to break through this mon. and it helps that it's also pretty good against other members of the team in Weavile and Bulu. Outside of those 4x weaknesses, Fairy also doesn't look great with 2 weaknesses and only 1 resist. But in general, not the best defensive synergy, lots of overall weaknesses, but the offense that we mentioned earlier definitely makes up for that.
And I think there are definitely enough support options. We obviously mentioned the Charge Bug as a support mon, but we also see, of course, talking about DNC being able to set up Trick Room. Metagross has that too. Salamence with Tailwind. I honestly think there are enough support options to make that work, but more often than not, this is just a powerful team. Maybe a little physical heavy, but definitely extremely powerful. And having all those 4x weaknesses, I think this really is a lot of just signature Jimmy's playstyle. We saw how much work he put in with the Heatran last season, and having some ones that maybe, they can exploit this pretty easily, but the rest of his team around it means you can swap in appropriate options with relative ease. I think maybe the Astron's the only pick that doesn't quite fit all of that, but it's such a solid solo individual defensive piece that requires a very specific way to dismantle that I think it ends up actually kind of fitting in. And who could say no to an electric and water immunity? What do you all think before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, to go over those Pokemon that we didn't talk about as much in depth. You've got the Gastrodon, which, like you said, is great defensive utility, typing and stat-wise. You've got the Weavile for fast offensive pressure. You've got Tapu Bulu providing the grassy terrain, providing a nice ground resist for his team, another water resist, and, also having a variety of strong options at its disposal. It's just a team that pretty much no matter who you're up against, you're going to be bringing 3 threats. And so I think this team is going to be really scary in the hands of its coach, because it's just got so many solid options that you can't put together a bad 3 Pokemon with it.
A traditionally very good coach, as we said, the defending champion from last season. There are high expectations. We'll see if he lives up to them as we move on to the next pick. Next up with the number 10 overall pick, we have Joey and his Akron Aggrons. Welcome, Joey.
Hi, glad to be here.
Alright, so with number 10 overall, you picked Volcanion, the water-fire type. This thing had an awesome showing last season on Chad's team. What gravitated you towards Volcanion as your pick? What does it bring to the table for you?
So part of it was its performance with Chad last season. Also, it's a strong fire type, which I normally tend to put off drafting and then not getting a strong fire type. So I was like, alright, let's just start with that this time. Water Absorb is also helpful. I don't remember if Dracovish got drafted, but Water Absorb is very helpful.
Could have been drafted by anyone. Could have been anyone.
Alright, but Water Absorb is always a good ability to have. Also, it's just got good stat spread. That's another thing I normally don't do too well on, picking up good stat spreads, so it just kind of checked a bunch of boxes for me.
True, and I know the Steam Eruption is just such a powerful move. This thing always looks so good on paper, for sure. And I see you also complemented that with a couple of mons off the ground as well to help complement the ground weakness there. Landorus Theory and got it in the second round, which is pretty nice. And the Cresselia pick as well. Really nice first 3 mons here. Really fat, bulky core here. Talk to me about those couple picks to complement the Volcanion.
Yeah. So Landorus, it's a ground immunity, intimidator, it can pivot, has earthquake, so just good damage dealer, also utility mon, just good all around, does a bunch of stuff for me. Also a higher speed than Volcanion, so it helped broaden my speed range a bit. Cresselia, it's very good as a bulky support mon, works for Trick Room. I don't really have much Trick Room options, but that can help me fit into those teams. It just helps really give me more defenses on the team.
And fellas, I think we also noticed another trend for how he drafted. What did you guys discover about the trending of his draft picks?
Well, it was very predictable if you were paying attention to the chat.
Interesting.
I may have had a habit of picking up whatever someone mentioned in the chat last, because that's a good pick, let's take it.
I mean, it worked because I think throughout this entire draft there were tons of good mons that for some reason people weren't drafting, and so they went pretty late. Nate, you said, Lando T lasting until the second round, Cresselia, of course, being a very good Pokemon in 2v2 formats. And then later on, Zarude, I thought was an excellent pickup that you got pretty late in the draft.
Yep, that's another one that I saw someone mention in the chat. It's like, all right, good pick, let's take it.
And definitely helped out the speed stat a little bit too, that and the Talonflame as well, from what I can tell. Those are pretty valuable, I would say, overall. Steve, how was he looking for type composition overall? What's kind of the theme here that you're seeing?
Honestly, it looks pretty good. There's a couple of the 4x weaknesses that are really weighing down those types in terms of just an average. But for Bug, for example, Zaru with that 4x weakness, but there's also 5 resists on the team, so that's not really an issue. Of course, Ice and Rock are a little iffy, but other than that, it's honestly really good. Every weakness is complemented by at least 1 resistance or immunity. So outside of those, blizzards and rock slides, probably looking quite fine.
So how do you feel about the team overall, Joe? You've had a little bit of time to start prepping. What are your thoughts?
After doing some prep, definitely like that first Volcanion pick. It was doing great in my practice games for prepping my first match. Talonflame, I haven't gotten around to prepping it, testing it out too much yet, but I think it will be interesting. It's got several doubles options. Obviously, it has Tailwind. That was the main reason I picked it up, but it also has a couple other pieces of utility like Quick Guard and Incinerate. Other things that I've noticed starting prepping, Ally Switch does not work in multi, so Wigglytuff might be going.
No, Wiggly.
Have you,
all around, been feeling pretty good.
Have you considered trying like a double slap rollout, seeing Wigglytuff?
I have not really looked at that too much. Maybe I'll have to consider it.
Oh, way to change up the moveset. Any other thoughts on Joey's team before we move on?
Yeah, no, I think the Pokemon I'm most interested in seeing what it does is that Talonflame. That he went for right in the middle of the draft, where I don't think it was a bad pick, but it was definitely not something I was expecting people to pick up. And so with the option of priority Tailwind, a good speed stat, some other support options, I'm really interested to see what work it can manage to put in.
Yeah, I'm prepping against Joey here for week 1, and some of the options here, especially worrying about the speed with Talonflame and some of the threatening aspects like the Intimidate, of course, is always a pain. It's not easy, but that's going to be a theme this season. So lots of options here, lots of versatility, and we'll see what Joey can do with it.
I'm kind of interested to see those 5th and 6th round picks. The Zarude that was touched on earlier with providing a nice speed stat, really nice versatility. Jungle healing is such a good move. And that Registeel was something I was kind of looking at in the later rounds as a solid steel type that can kind of hold its own very well, provide some nice, more traditional support, while also being quite threatening in a couple different interesting ways. So it's a very cool team. I want to see it come together for sure. Any closing thoughts, Joey?
Not particularly. We'll see if Wigglytuff gets to stick around. I'm feeling probably not.
Unfortunate, but both those types are very valuable in this current environment. Joey
That
has
is
done
true.
very well recently in the regular season. Let's see with such a drastic change if he can keep that up, and we'll move on to the next pick. And with the number 11 pick overall, we had John, coach of the Close Combat Club. Thanks for joining us, John.
No problem.
And your first pick, this is such classic, John. It is Amoonguss, which maybe it's because you're more used to doubles leagues. I'm not sure. It is most certainly a powerhouse in this league. I'm surprised it dropped all the way to 11. How do you feel about getting that with your number 11 pick?
Felt like a very safe pick, both because I have played with Amoonguss extensively in singles and doubles.
For sure, and I love the pairing with Heatran, of course. We saw Heatran to great success last season with Tangrowth. both resisting just about everything, and the only real common weakness being the ground typing, which Amoonguss does not resist in exchange for Tangrowth, which does not resist fighting. Seems like a pretty natural pairing, and quite a few people wanted that Heatran as well. How do you feel about getting that nice pairing up top?
I feel pretty good about it. I've never used Heatran before, but I know it was a top pick last season, always a top pick in general. But specifically when Jimmy, what is Jimmy's name?
The Noctowls.
Noctowls. When the Noctowls used it, it was a powerhouse last season. So I'm really looking forward to being able to use it.
Absolutely, and that's a very strong part to that Firewater Grass core that we see often. Steve, how do the types overall look for John?
They look fine. There's really no weaknesses that really stand out that don't come from 4 times. Of course, there's Ghost. There's the Ghost Resistance Scrafty, but 2 weaknesses in Latias and Mimikyu. But then again, the Ghost Resist also a Shadow Sneak, so that is certainly helpful. Fairy's a little iffy with the 4 times weakness from Scrafty, but then again, Amoonguss and Heatran both resisting that, so really nothing that is all that worrisome here.
Sure, nothing.
Yeah, along with Corviknight too.
True, yeah. To double steel types, but they also complement each other very well, not sharing any of those weaknesses at all. Michael, we see a lot of the lower tier picks suddenly showing the powerhouses of the team, right? The first 3 generally support. Maybe you can argue Heatran is very powerful, but Mimikyu, Azumarill, and Latias really bring out, I think, the power of the squad. What do you think about some of his later picks?
Oh, I definitely agree. Latias just has so much versatility in a 2v2 format like this. It's got so many support options, as well as just, it's got a reasonable special attack on its own. It can definitely put in some of its own work. Azumarill, of course, it can do crazy damage. It's got a very strong Aqua Jet if you're running priority. You can even, if you want to run Sapsipper, try and pull something off on your opponent. You can do that too. But it's a great option for, potentially being able to have strong priority, but also being somewhat slow and maybe be able to take somewhat advantage of a Trick Room setup. Mimikyu, what can't you do with a Disguise Up? It's just a free eat a hit, and you can just do so much with that. And then Corviknight. I think Corviknight is an incredible pick for his last pick. It's just a solid bulky mon, has Tailwind. It's just great options.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot rounded out the team well at the end.
Yeah.
2 physical fairy attackers. It's tough to find one, let alone 2. And while you might think it ends up being tough to work around things like steel types, we have a Heatran. There's not too much to worry about overall. Steve, what do you think about the overall composition of the team together? You talked a little bit about types, but what else stands out to you?
All in all, there's a lot of mons here that are going to be quite effective working together. There'll be a matter of seeing how well John's able to prep with his teammates and come together with a cohesive strategy for those games. Lots of mons and options to succeed here. Just gotta select the right ones and work together well to get there.
Intimidate, Rage Powder, Speed, Low Speed, got just about anything you could want. John, what are your overall thoughts of your team before we move on to the next guy?
I'm looking forward to using it. I have a lot of guys on here that I've never used before, and quite a few guys that I have extensive experience with. So really looking forward to figuring out how we do team prep each week and figure out how well it works in really supporting my partner.
And John is someone with probably more experience than most of us in doubles, so I think we'll expect a lot out of your knowledge of not just the format, but your team in general. Let's move on to the last pick. And to finish up the draft with the number 12 overall pick, and thus also number 13, it is Sasbo of the Boulder Boldores, and his first 2 picks, which we're going to kind of discuss together, considering he was on the wheel, were Excadrill and Whimsicott. These are definitely 2 strong picks, one more so known for singles, one more so known for doubles. Steve, tell me a little about these 2.
Yeah, so I had Excadrill last season. I kind of speak pretty well to it. And Excadrill is very, very much a big threat in Sandstorm, and Sandstorm in general, and it's a lot easier to set up in doubles. If he's able to find partners who are able to set up the Sandstorm to trigger that Sand Rush on Excadrill, it is incredibly fast and incredibly strong. It has options to run like Sword Stance to boost its power. Earthquake, of course, with the multi-hit move that stab and will do a ton of damage. It has Rock Slide for that. Also good rock coverage, especially paired with Earthquake. Plus, Rapid Spin for hazards, and is in general just a huge wall breaker that he has. And, behind the Sandstorm, if his partner can set it up, quite scary. Whimsicott, on the other hand, is the Prankstermon. And that's it. It's Prankster. Prankster's great. It has tons of options to use with it, and it's kind of the premier Prankstermon. Very notably, Tailwind, being able to set that up and allowing the teammate to take advantage of that in the same turn. Other options that can be very useful: Taunt, Encore, Helping Hand. All of these support options, and that's just the top of the level. There's all sorts of stat debuff moves it gets that it could use with Prankster. All sorts of options to support its teammates and their efforts.
Yeah, knowing Sasbo, he really likes Whimsicott, even in singles, so I'm excited to see him utilize this thing to its full effectiveness. The rest of his team, I do kind of like a lot of the individual pieces he has, and I think Arcanine definitely stands out foremost among them, but Michael, why don't you talk to us a little bit about what the rest of the team can do to help those top 2 picks?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Arcanine is a great Pokemon, and I definitely think, I wouldn't even necessarily say that people undervalue it, but people just don't seem to think of it very often. But, it's a great Intimidator, it's got bulk, it's got some fun coverage options, it has Helping Hand, so it can definitely do, it can provide some threatening coverage while also doing some decent support with Intimidate. Braviary, we've seen a fair amount of Intimidate, as you often do in any 2v2 format, and Defiant Braviary is an excellent way to pressure your opponent to not bring that. Rotom-Mow, I was looking at myself during the draft, and it's a ground immunity and resists electricity 4 times, which are some of the more spammable area-hitting moves. So I think that's a great pickup, as well as just having, status and support options. The Clef and the Quagsire, I think, are pretty interesting picks. The Clef, it's known for being a huge wall and pivot in singles, but doesn't have necessarily all the bulk some other walls and support options do for doubles. So I'm not sure exactly, it's going to put in work for sure. It's a Clefable. But we'll see exactly how you can get the most out of that this season. And the Quagsire, I hate it because it's a Water Absorbmon, and I have an Urshifu. So I think it'll definitely put in some work this season, that there are some real heavy-hitting water options in the league. Hey, it can always Earthquake everyone on the field if it needs.
It's a pretty interesting niche pick that can see use at pretty much any level that it wants to. Something I noticed too is there's a decent bit of overlap with typings. You have 2 ground types, 2 grass types, 2 fairy types. Steve, how does this affect the overall type matchup and coverage from his team?
We definitely do see here some kind of shared weaknesses here. For example, Fire having 3 weaknesses with only 2 resists, a little bit of a weakness there. Ice, of course, being bad with 3 weaknesses. Poison, surprisingly, usually one of the better matchups, but here only 1 immunity and 1 resist with 2 weaknesses and 1 quad weakness. So definitely some small issues on typing, but other than that, things are looking pretty good. And a lot of these weaknesses to uncommon tops like Poison are coming from multiple fairy types, which therefore gives great matchup against Dragon, which is a lot more threatening and common offensive type.
Yeah, so I think overall this is much more of a mix and match team than maybe a lot of others. You got to bring the right mons to pair with your partner and kind of use some of the moves that we don't necessarily see that much use in singles. All right, we got Whimsicott with Fake Tears. You have Snarl on Arcanine, Follow Me on Clefable, Tailwind Braviary, Discharge on Rotom. There are a lot of tools. I don't know about together, but if you pick the right 3 for each week, I think they can put in just a ton of work. Michael, what are your overall thoughts then on the team synergy?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think Whimsicott is going to be pulling a whole lot of work for this team for the season. Just looking at the speed tiers, Whimsicott has the 116 base, but what I'm really looking at is the ability for Prankster Tailwind, considering he's got 5 Pokemon between 60 and 95 speed. That's a lot in the lower middle speed tiers. So I think he's really going to be needing to pay attention to speed control and what he can do to get his own side's speed up and his opponent's speed down.
Prankster Tailwind is pretty good at that, though no Trick Room options. Although I suppose Whimsicott does get that too, so maybe you're right. Whimsicott may just be the key to the entire team to bring it together. And Steve, do you have any closing thoughts before we truly finish our breakdowns?
I'm excited to see what Joe can do with his team. You know, as you guys mentioned, lots of pieces, and we'll see if he's able to put them together with his teammate week to week.
All right, and that's going to do it for our breakdowns. Let's finish things up with some predictions. And that will bring us to a conclusion, looking over the 12 coaches and teams that they've drafted. A lot of different stuff, a lot of cool stuff here. We're kind of at a loss as to what might happen, but I think we may have some hints or some things that we're looking forward to playing out overall. Steve, give us one big thought about what you think might happen this season, or one big overall trend that you're looking forward to this season.
So in doubles, usually things like terrain, trick room, weather play a huge part. And going into the draft, I feel many other coaches kind of thought it wouldn't have such a big impact given the multi-battle format, you know, having to work with not only your team but a partner's team who has to equally be able to exploit the terrain or weather or trick room that you're setting up. However, after kind of the draft is over and, you know, people have started looking at team building, I kind of feel that terrain and weather might play a bigger part than people were expecting. Certainly could be wrong about this, but, you know, just having the threat of, you know, some sort of environmental help to your team or hindrance to the opponents, it really can add up and lead to some big shifts in the future. So we'll definitely see how this all plays out moving forward.
As somebody
Michael,
drafted
what about
Rain,
you?
I hope you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, I definitely think the most interesting thing about this season is just going to be see how it changes from beginning to end. It's going to be one of our longer seasons at 11 weeks, and you're going to be playing everyone twice, which means there's so much room for strategy to improve, you know, just between who you're playing, but also just, it's a wacky format none of us really have wrapped our heads around yet, and so with a full 11 weeks, playing people multiple times, there's going to be so much room for people to grow and for prep to get more advanced as the season goes on. I'm really looking forward to see where it all ends up.
Yeah,
What about you, Nate?
To kind of bounce off that, I have said that the toughest matchup in draft is the rematch, which you've already lost, and facing people multiple times in a season, that's going to be crazy. I think my main point that I would like to kind of mention, looking at where our first chance to prep, we see a few different distinct strategies that you can bring up. I don't know if it's going to be possible to try and counter all those ideas that we have, and it feels like a lot of, at least the early matchups, may just be decided on a coin flip. Did I prep for this or not? Did I see this coming or not? How much do I have to lean into countering one strategy over another, and how much is that going to bite me in the butt whenever it actually comes to team preview and I realize, oh, I've just lost? As you've also mentioned with the longer season, I kind of hope to see us grow as the season moves on, and maybe our knowledge of the format increases and we're able to cover for more and more options, and by the end we become actually skillful players, which I don't know about that, if we can actually go that far, but those are kind of our overall thoughts of the format. But this is a video in which we went over all of the coaches. Steve, I want you to give me 2 coaches that stand out to you that you think are destined for the playoffs and that you really want to follow closely this season.
Oh, wow, putting me on the spot first, I see. All right. Thinking through 12 coaches, I'll give the first spot to Elf Owls. As we discussed, such massive threats on his team, especially with the top 3, Deyancy, Metagross, and Salamence. I really think that the options and versatility of those 3 months especially are going to be quite difficult to prepare for from a week-to-week basis, and will certainly help. And, you know, as you mentioned with that coin toss, he's, you know, a coin toss every week, and even if, you know, you lose a coin toss, even if you know what they're bringing, those are still difficult mons to defeat. And for the other one, I'll go ahead and give it to you, Nate, and the Buffalo Bouffalant. A lot based on your historical performance. Quite a strong coach always. One of the only person really to draft a team focused on a specific weather, with one of the few weather setters as well. As I mentioned, I kind of think the weather and terrain will have a bigger impact than was originally expected, and your team being one of the few to take advantage of it will certainly allow a rain offense or defense to take form and really help out your positioning. And I think between that and your past performance, nearly a lock for the playoffs. But of course, we'll see. Michael, how about you?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna throw out first. I think person who's going to be kind of a litmus test for the season. I think someone who's going to do really well or struggle a bit is going to be Knife Wizard and the Steamrollers. When we went over their team, we talked about how they have a very obvious Trick Room core, a very obvious Psychic core, and it's a pretty straightforward team, but there's such strong options. Either people are going to struggle to adapt to it, and he's just going to have win after win, or people are going to figure things out over the course of the season, and I think he's really going to have to do some interesting stuff to pull wins out at the end. So I'm really interested to see how his season goes. And then, I have to mention what's definitely my favorite team this season, and I wish it was mine, but it's yours, Steve's. It's the Wobbuffets. It's Ultra Beast Team. It's just so good. I want it to do so good, because when are you going to see another team like this again? And it's got so many options that I can't believe that it's not going to pull off some amazing, ridiculous things this season. Nate, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to go maybe a little bit off the wall here, considering that we've only been mentioning the top teams mostly from our regular draft seasons. Someone who's been very up and down, but won a previous VGC season is Zach and the Summit County Psyducks. This team looks stupid good on paper. The triple flying types, 2 genies. I think we're all a little bit sick of seeing genies all over the place, but the team is just too good top to bottom. If there's a format that this guy knows, it's doubles. And even if the multi-battles are slightly different, he's definitely got the mindset for it. He's definitely got the team for it. It just looks way too stacked top to bottom to say otherwise. And for my second team, I'm going to go with the person who finished 1 spot ahead of me last regular season, and that is Hugh Michael and your Route 1 Birbs. I love the team top to bottom. I think especially what really sells it for me are a lot of the picks at the end are so solid, such value picks. Thunderous in round 6, are you kidding me? Kiram and Togekiss and excellent support mons. Really good top to bottom. You can bring anything any week, and it will do the amount of work that you want to put in. So I think we have a pretty solid 6 teams here that we're really keeping an eye on. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. Thank you for joining me, Steve and Michael. Really appreciate you guys coming out and helping make this a reality. This was cool to put together, and it'll be interesting to look back on this after the season is done and see just how right or wrong we were. I'm sure you all will hold us accountable down below as well. So thanks again for joining, and let's see how the season shakes out.